Okay, today we're going to cut out a rather unique sign on the scroll saw using this Area51 sign with a couple of figures embedded in it. Now the way we're going to work this is we're going to take this piece of maple and use that as the area for our sign, and we're going to cut out first the figures. We're going to cut those on the scroll saw at about a 5-degree angle to the left. Now when we do that, we're going to cut around in a clockwise fashion. When we're done, we should be able to force those two figures out so they have a three-dimensional effect, rather eerie on this background of the Area51 sign. And that should work pretty well. Now what we'll do later on, of course, after that, is we'll return it to the 90-degree angle and cut out the rest of the sign. And then we'll set this up on a base. We ought to have a rather striking looking piece. At least that's what I'm hoping. I'm going to use maple for this that I have. It's about 1/4 inch, maybe a little more than 1/4 inch thick for the whole thing. And what I'll probably do is use some stain on the figures so that they'll stand out from the lightness of the maple wood Area51 in the background. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll first of all cut out the pattern and put it down on the board using tape and adhesive. What I use for tape is this green painter's tape. Works pretty good. Doesn't matter what color it is. If you like the blue, use the blue. If you like regular masking tape, use regular masking tape. Doesn't really matter. But you want to get good coverage on the board. Okay, once you got that done, fold these edges over so they won't be in the way. We have our nice little board that we're going to use to glue down our pattern. Just cut the pattern out from the sheet. Nothing really complicated here. Okay, the idea is going to be, of course, to glue down this pattern on the piece of wood, like that. And what we're going to use is a glue stick to stick up the back on this thing, and then we'll be able to firmly place it down on the board. Okay, I got a nice sticky back on this thing now. A little bit of a curl to it at the moment, and we're going to place this down on the board so that the bottom section is level with the edge of the board, and then just rub that down so that it's nice and flat. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. Should hold on there pretty nicely while we do our cutting. Now the next thing we have to do is go drill some entry holes for the saw blade. I'm going to want to cut out the eyes and little pieces from the ship at a regular 90-degree angle. I'm going to want to cut the actual figures out, as I said, at a slight 5-degree angle. So we're going to make holes in all these, and then of course the regular sign needs to have entry holes as well, and those will be cut out at a regular 90-degree angle. So let's go over to the scroll saw and take care of this now. I have a drill over here that I use mini drill press that I use to drill my entry holes with a 16th inch drill bit in there. So we're going to use that to put the holes in this pattern so that we can use them on the scroll saw. Okay, I think we've got the holes nicely drilled. I'm going to, when I drill the, when I cut the figures out on the sign, the eyes, for example, on the alien are going to be cut out completely, so you won't see the numbering in the background. So I'll be taking that whole eye out. But when you're looking at the sign in its entirety, the mind sort of plays a little trick on you and sort of fills in those lines so that you actually can read that sign Area 51 in the background. You'll see that when we get the final thing put together. Okay, now we can take this and move on over to the scroll saw and start to do our cutting. We're going to cut, first of all, the figures out, and as I mentioned, first of all we're going to do the internal cuts on them. We'll do those at 90 degrees, and then we'll do the surrounding areas at a 5-degree angle. We'll see how that works. If you're going to do this with your own board, if you make a thicker board, for example, or if you are doing it and you aren't quite sure about what's going to happen, you should probably test this out on a piece of scrap wood in terms of the angle of your saw and the direction in which you cut. We'll use a clockwise direction, so we should have no problem. So let's go start to work on our scroll saw. Here we go. Alright, now what we're going to want to do is adjust this scroll saw so that it has a 90 degree, not a 90 degree, a 5-degree angle to the left. So the saw will be sitting at that angle. This is exaggerating, of course. It'll be sitting at an angle so that when we cut, the figure will be forced out of the sign area. So let's do that now. I don't know how you do this on your saw, but on the Excalibur and some of the others, you just simply loosen up this little pinion and turn the wheel till it goes over to the distance you want it. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 seems a little pronounced now that I think of it. I think I'm going to go back to 3 instead of 5. 1, 2, 3. We just want it to jut out a little bit. We don't want it to be monstrously exposed. Then you tighten up your lock and you should be good to go. Okay, now that we've got our saw angled, we can cut out our little figures here. Change it to a 3-degree angle instead of a 5. I also had to drill some entry holes for the figures we're going to be removing. You don't want to have the holes right on the figure, sort of off to the side a little bit, so that they're not that noticeable. So let's cut these figures out now at hopefully the appropriate angle. we'll sort of do our test on the fly here. Try to keep my hands out of the way again, as I said. Maybe I can successfully do that. So you can see what's going on here. Okay, and we're going to go in a clockwise fashion, of course, when we cut this. Okay, now cut out the external parts of the spaceship. Let's test this one out, see if it works. Probably will, because the other one worked, so don't see any reason why I wouldn't. Okay, we'll put both of these in here, give you an idea of what this thing looks like. It's in its really early stages, of course, but okay, as you can see, those figures are going to jump right off of the lettering. We'll create some nice shadows too with the lighting. So, alright, the next thing we want to do now is to actually cut out the lettering. Pretty straightforward, same as you would do with any other sign. I'm going to sort of speed this up so that it won't bore you with the whole project. Okay, so let's get the lettering cut out next. Okay, finished cutting out the sign, and there it is, standing up pretty good. Back off here a little bit with the camera. That was it. Now we're going to, of course, insert our 3D effect later on, but right now we've got all the surface area cut out. Now what I'd like to do next is, I'm going to have to peel all the pattern off, of course, but I'd like to make a base for this, and I'm going to do that next. But before I do that, I want to take those pieces of inserts that we're going to put in here later on down the road and do some staining of them so that they really stand out from the light maple in the background. So we'll do that next. Okay, to make the figures stand out on the background of the lettering that we're going to have on the sign, we're going to stain these figures with what is called an English chestnut stain, which is give it a little darker finish than what it is on the maple, and this will make them really pop off of the Now while these are drying, I'm going to get another piece of wood and make the base. And the way I'm going to make the base is it's going to be what I call an improvised cut. I want to make it, since this is a rather alien type of subject, we want to make it look a little bit alien, the base a little bit alien. So we're going to cut sort of a jagged, improvised cut to do that. So let's go and work on that right now, and we'll let these guys dry. Okay, for the base we're going to do a two-part cut on this piece of maple. We're going to cut out this little wedge on the side here first, and then we're going to go over to the scroll saw and make some jagged cuts along the way. So I'm doing this on the scroll saw because I can make a turn easily here. On the bandsaw it would be a little more difficult, so let's do that cut first. Okay, cut those two wedge pieces out. Now we're going to go to the bandsaw and cut out those little jagged pieces I want to cut. The reason I'm not going to do them on here is that it takes a little bit longer to do them with this, and the blade is not as strong and can't cut through as fast as it can on the bandsaw. So let's go over there and do that now. The bandsaw, now let's just do our jagged cut here arbitrarily. Okay, we got a nice jagged cut we can use for a base on this thing. We don't want it to be too smooth because it gives that eerie effect. So we're going to leave it that way. And we also got some burned edges too on these, which worked out kind of nice because I'd like to have that burned effect on the edges of the base. Okay. Okay, over here at the sand flea now, what I'd like to do is just sand off the edges on this thing, round them over a little bit so they're not so sharp in handling it. Okay, you can handle that a little better now without cutting your fingers on the edges of this board, and it makes a nice base for the sign that we're making. We're going to leave this unstained, similar to the actual sign. Actually, I think it's a little bit lighter maple than the other maple we had. Okay, the stained pieces have dried nicely. And what we're going to do is we're going to put a little glue along the edges of these so that we can stick them to the inside of the sign. Now I notice a problem that has occurred here is that this sign is, the way it was designed, it had an opening here, so it left this on a rather flimsy edge. So when we put this in here now, it's going to go right through if we don't brace this back the way it originally was. So what we'll do is we'll put a little bit of glue on the edges here. Don't need a lot, just enough to get the thing placed into the sign. Wipe that off. I'm going to be pressing in there, so it ought to be fine. I'll take that now, put it through the hole, and raise it up to where we want it, and then sort of press it in there to hold it in place. And I think we'll take a little clamp. Make sure that's balanced nicely. We'll take a little clamp here. And we'll just sort of lock it in there a little bit. You don't need a lot of pressure on this. Just enough to keep it from moving around while it's drying. Okay, so we've got that in there now. And while the glue is drying, we can do this other piece. There we go. Okay. Put that in there with a little bit of pressure on it. Couldn't see that while I was working on it, but I got it up there now. Okay, what we do is we inserted that in the top part here with the glue around the edges, and there's enough pressure on there so we don't really need a clamp on this part. We're going to let this dry a little bit before we put it on the base, and then we'll go about sealing it as well. Okay. Okay, the sign is dried nicely. What we'll do is take it apart there. And we'll take some glue and put it along the bottom of the sign. Don't need a lot on there, just a little bit. Wipe off any excess. Cut down the bleed out if we do that. Make sure we got enough coverage here. Okay. We take our sign and just put it down on top of the manufactured base. And we've got a couple of clamps. Put a clamp on each end here. Make sure that's fastened down nicely. And we'll just let that dry now. And when that's dry, we'll take it over and give it a finish. Basically, we'll put a sealer on it, and that'll pretty well finish the sign off.